Many of you may not know this, but there is an old urban piece of folklore about a middle-aged man hiding in his own house from his own feral children, trying desperately to steal youth through filibustering on a YouTube channel. This brings us, of course, to Aging Gracefully. I am Matthew Essex. Thank you so much for sitting in with us as we discuss 1998's urban legend. First off, let's give credit where credit is due, because Scream in 1996 revitalized horror cinema as we knew it. And because of the critical acclaim that came with the movie, as well as all the dollar signs that were attached to it, we had an avalanche of new horror headed our way. The most significant of those, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine was in there, and of course, Urban Legend. Now the premise here, it was a fun one, because our villain decides to pick people off based off of popular urban legends. Now, we don't know why initially, but isn't it a lot more fun and a whole lot scarier if you're not aware of what the motive is, if there isn't an explanation for any of it, when someone just snaps? I feel like that's the best kind of horror. Now, we open this urban legend with a smiling girl traveling in a Ford Explorer down a rainy road in the middle of the night. She's enjoying herself. She's singing along poorly to one of the most obnoxious songs that I've ever heard, and she overlooks how low she is on gas. In fact, she winds up driving right past a well-lit, highly populated gas station before she even realizes that she's running low and getting close to eat. Once she does notice this, she's fortunate in the fact that there's a service station up to her right, but it's a lot scarier looking, a little more deserted, and not the kind of place that she would like to find herself. This is where we meet horror icon Brad Dourif starring in this movie as the stuttering attendant at what has to have been the last full-service gas station in America. He takes her card, she's very rude, starts pumping gas, but then he notices something in the back seat. Now, I give him a lot of credit here. He comes up with a creative way to get her out of the car so he can try to tell her what's going on. Comes back, says, hey, the credit card company is on the phone for you. She doesn't want to get out of the car because she's creeped out by the guy, but she grabs her pepper spray, gets out of the car, goes inside, and notices that there's nobody on the other end of the phone. Now, she panics. He's trying to get out his sentence. He's got a speech impediment. He can't convey what he needs to her in that moment in time, and she sprays him in the face, shatters the window, climbs out, rushes to her car, freaked out that she was about to be attacked by this guy, and as she hits him with her car, races off. He stands up, and finally he's able to tell her there's someone in the back seat. That is pretty metal, guys. That is a great way to start a horror movie. We see her racing off. She's panicked. She's freaked out. She starts to calm down. She's back to some bad singing. And then somebody raises up from the back seat with an axe. Bye-bye, baby. Now, is that really an optimal weapon for use in such close quarters? That's bothered me for decades. Why an axe? Our next set piece is Pendleton University, which looks like a college that you see in like a CW show. I mean, it's got a lot of similarities, but we land at a little coffee hangout where we get to meet the meat of the cast. And it's a hell of a cast because Jared Leto plays Paul, who's the college newsman. Alicia Witt plays Natalie. Rebecca Gayheart is here as Brenda, who is Natalie's best friend. We've also got Michael Rosenbaum before he turned in a stellar Lex Luthor performance in the great TV show Smallville. We've got Joshua Jackson as Damon. Tara Reid plays Sasha, and those are just the starring roles. Now Parker, who is played by Michael Rosenbaum, he tells the story of Stanley Hall Massacre, which involves a professor, I believe it was, going door to door with a knife, knocking on the door, and anybody that answered got their throat cut. And right away, this sets the tone for these kids being really interested in all these secondhand stories that we've all been told throughout our lives. You know how they go. I'll tell somebody, and then by the time that person tells the next person, they've added something to the story. In fact, after Natalie walks in on the beloved Danielle Harris as Tosh, banging some guy in their dorm room we wind up moving on to meeting Robert Englund, another piece of horror royalty, playing Professor Wexler, giving a lecture on urban legends to the core of our cast. This leads us to the pop rock scene, and I'm sure everybody's seen the pop rock scene, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've at least heard the myth that if you eat the Pop Rocks candy, you cannot drink a carbonated beverage right after it because it will cause your stomach to blow up. I never had the guts to try it, but the story resonated out there. Everybody's heard it at least once in their life. And they essentially play that out in class. Rebecca Gayhart's character Brenda wants nothing to do with it. Damon volunteers, pranks the class, and it's a fun scene, mostly because I love seeing Robert Englund in anything. The guy's just a gem, and it's kind of neat to see him outside of his Freddy makeup every once in a while. Great turn in Stranger Things, too, I might add. Loved it. So Paul publishes a story the next morning about the death of the girl in the car with the axe at the gas station. It turns out the clerk's missing. There's a lot to this. This, of course, introduces us to the dean of the school, who is no fan of Paul's. He does not appreciate the fact that Paul is out there putting news that could hurt enrollment. And he's not a fan. He doesn't want him doing such things, so he tries to withhold the newspapers from him. And in doing so, he incorporates Reese into the plan. Now, Reese is the head of security for the campus. Another great character here, played by Loretta Devine. A lot of fun, and she's obsessed with Foxy Brown. So you just know we'll be seeing a lot of her, and we're going to have a good time when she's on our screen. Now, the next morning, the grisly death of that girl is really all the kids are talking about. And most of them claim to not even know the girl, Natalie included, even though we find out that's a lie. Natalie is very upset about what happened to this girl, and you see her go back to her dorm, get out her yearbook, and take a look at it. And sure enough, in high school, they were co-captains of the same cheer team, so they know each other very well. Now, seeing her stressed, Damon comes in, and he shoots a shot. He makes a move and convinces her he's a sympathetic ear. He can listen to whatever she has going on, and he won't judge her. He'll try to be there to help. This, of course, is just to get her out in a parked car out in the middle of the woods to, see what he can get away with. The Dawson's Creek theme plays when he starts this car up too, which I thought was a really solid touch, because if you were alive in that area, if you were cognizant of music in that area, you were sick of that goddamn song. Damon tries, but he fails with Natalie, and Natalie's realization of what Damon's trying to do, absolutely hilarious. I loved that in this scene. It was just the slightest look that came over Alicia Witt in this role, and I laugh every time I see it. But the urban legend at play for this scene is the legend that involves the girl's boyfriend and his fingertips, or his feet, depending on how you tell the story, scraping on the top of the parked car. Now, Damon's dead. He's hung, and I don't know how they pulled this off. Here's the thing about this movie, and we'll just say this real quick. Once you look back on it, once you know what happened, some of the logic is just a real head scratcher. We're going to overlook that, though, because we had some fun with this. Now, Natalie narrowly evades the killer, alerts Reese about what happened, but by the time they go back to the spot where the car was with the body and the windshield, nothing's there. No trace of anyone. It's almost like it never happened. And the friend group, when Natalie tells everybody what's going on, they suggest that because Damon is the best practical joker on campus, it was all an elaborate prank. And Natalie drives herself nuts over this. Absolutely crazy. Because she knows what she saw, and she doesn't feel like it's all a stunt. She thinks something really happened to this guy, but nobody believes her. Even when we get what I thought was a really great "Aren't you glad you didn't turn the lights on?" death, because it was made to look like a suicide, that one gets written off too. I mean, the dean is all too happy to pin these on something other than a murder. And I understand his point of view, but he doesn't really have the kid's safety at heart. Now, even with those words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" written on the wall in blood, nobody believes Natalie. And I love the way they did this, because at the start, when Natalie walked in on Tosh yelled at her to turn the light off. And in this instance, Tosh is online trying to find a hookup for the night. She finds one, She goes to get ready, but before she leaves, she asks, "What room are you in?" She leaves, goes to pretty herself up. It's not hard. It's Danielle Harris. She's gorgeous. And comes back, and the reply was, "I'm in your room." And then she gets attacked. So she's struggling with a killer on her bed. Natalie comes back, goes to turn the light on, realizes she hears similar noises from when Tosh was hooking up days prior, and ignores her. Goes to bed with the killer killing her roommate. And all she does is put on a set of headphones. I really dug how they did that. I thought that was really diabolical. It was a really cool way to set that whole thing up. Now there's a dynamic with Brenda because she's really hung up on Paul. And Paul and Natalie are sort of drawn to one another because of these attacks. You know, Paul winds up being the only one to really believe or start to buy into Natalie's theory of an urban legends killer. And the pair then decide they're going to start looking a little more closely at the Stanley Hall massacre and the role that Professor Wexler, played stellarly by Robert Englund, had in the whole thing. Because they learn he's the sole survivor of that entire massacre. And on top of that, we're starting to get close to the 25th anniversary of that tragedy. Now, the more and more concerned Natalie starts to grow over this whole thing, she brings her friends in closer to her because she feels like she has to keep an eye on everybody and she wants everybody to know what's been going on. Now, she ends up confessing to Brenda that she knew the girl from the start of the film. They had grown apart because they played a high beam prank on a young man 2 years prior, back when they were still in high school. That ended with the death of the young man. And that sounds like a pretty good motive for revenge for me. Now, for those of you who don't know about the high beam prank, it's essentially a pair in a car, turn their lights off at night, and they're driving through. And when somebody flashes their high beams to signal to them, "Hey, turn your lights on, whack job, you're driving in the middle of the night," they'll then turn their lights on and follow closely, flashing their high beams at them just to scare the other car. It's really juvenile. I never did it. I know gang members do that a lot as an initiation. One thing that had me worried about this movie, though, even 45 minutes into watching it, was how are they going to be able to keep up this urban legend theme for the killings? I mean, it felt like they were overcommitting themselves there. But I thought they managed it pretty well, if we're being perfectly honest, because they used only a couple of more, including a gruesome variation of the Pop Rocks kill. But most of the rest of the murders in this movie were just good old-fashioned stalk and kills. Now, the parka as the killer's outfit and the blackout mask, I thought that was pretty creepy looking. It was a little weird how they kept popping up. Like, I've never known anybody to wear that kind of parka. And in this movie, there's 4 or 5 different people that have that exact same parka. But I appreciated that they didn't limit themselves to what they could do with the deaths. But the Scream influence, it's all over this movie with their whodunit approach to trying to find the killer. I mean, they've got a great red herring in this janitor that pops up throughout this movie. I mean, he's very creepy, and he's guaranteed to have been up to something in his lifetime. He's not innocent. He just might not be the killer here. Wexler gets made out to be an early candidate because of his link to Stanley Hall, and it's Robert Englund. Anytime you see Robert Englund in anything, you assume people are going to start dying. That's just how it works. You play Freddy Krueger for a few decades, you're going to get a reputation. There are at times also that you suspect Paul, and then you get the reveal and you're like, no kidding, I did not see that one coming. I really enjoyed the good old-fashioned chase through the campus radio station when it came time for Sasha to check out of this film. Thought she did a good job hiding, ducking, evading. Ultimately, though, they can't all get away. The dean gets a brutal death in the parking garage, and slowly you're able to start checking names off of your suspect list. I really, really did, though. I loved the reveal of the killer. I don't think that I suspected this person. I really don't think that I did. I thought it was a surprise, and the best part is when this person revealed themselves to be the one singular killer, because Scream gave us a lot of things, and the hipness of having more than one killer was one of them. And I was really relieved to just have one killer in this movie, but I thought that person really ramped up their portrayal of their character in this movie once we knew what they were up to. They had great motive, solid logic, and trying to fold these random acts of violence into the anniversary of Stanley Hall it made sense, and they had a hell of a lot more fun being bad. I kind of would have loved to have seen more of this person in that role. I really could have gotten behind that, and when you see how the film ends, you thought that that was a possibility. Speaking of the ending, though, it's not all sunny. It's not all positive. It was a little contrived. When we got to the end, it was just a little silly. It affected the score ever so slightly. But this is a really fun horror film. It drips with late 90s murder, with melodrama and mystery, and all the great things that you want a movie to have. For me, this one's going to be a solid 7.5. I feel like it ages gracefully. I watched it the other day for my rewatch with my son, and he really got into it. And if you could pull a 15-year-old off of his phone for 90 minutes, you got something there. And we did that with this one. So that's a big part of that 7.5 is because my son left TikTok alone for an extended period of time. He went right back to it when the credits rolled. Well done, though, Urban Legend. One of the strengths and one of the things I love the most about it, I thought the cast here was great. I appreciated how they rounded that cast of those young, hip names out with horror icons in those ancillary roles to really punch it up. The college kids that were our core, I felt like they did a pretty good job, even though now we know that Jared Leto was probably a scumbag. Parker, played by Michael Rosenbaum, he was really good, but you can't figure out if he wants to be Randy or Stu from Scream. You feel that fusion of those two characters in his role, but he was trying to be somebody he maybe wasn't. I don't know, it felt like he was playing a character. I still love the guy. I think he's great, and I think he was good here. I just got a lot of those vibes. Let me know what you thought of Urban Legend. If you've heard a really scary Urban Legend and you want to share that, I'll listen to that too. I appreciate you guys checking in for this movie. If you enjoy what we do, you know the rest of the spiel. Try to subscribe, try to like, try to comment, drop me a line. Let's be best friends till the end. This is Aging Gracefully. I'm Matthew Essex. I'm going to stop begging now. I'll see you guys on the other side.